Want to do an inner practice?
Yeah, kind of. Actually, do you want to lead us in a meditation before we go?
Yeah, I think that might be
great.
nice. Yeah, just invitation to feel your body on the chair or the floor. And start to notice your breath. And bring your attention in and down. So taking some deeper than normal breaths. And just paying attention to what's here. If there's any movement or tension, peace, giving it permission to be here. Giving ourselves permission to be here, to land here fully together. With the intention to listen to ourselves, to listen to each other. And to honor that our truths and the pauses remembering to stay internally focused while we're communing with each other. And just opening our heart spaces, and bringing some love into the room, some connection and appreciation. And just slowly re-entering the space together when we're ready. Opening our eyes and taking a look around.
Thanks, I'm so much more grounded after you did that. Yeah, so we're here to talk about energy work. My only intention really is that we follow the energy in doing it. And to start, I want to kind of share where I've been energetically and launch into a conversation that I've been excited to have with you. The best way that I can describe it is feeling so stretched out and split to where, and maybe I shouldn't even be thinking of it as like polar opposites, but that's kind of how I've been experiencing it. Like, it feels like on one hand, my life's going incredibly well. I'm experiencing a lot of flow in business. There's just really big opportunities that are coming my way. And then simultaneously, I've been having a lot of health issues, and I don't believe I have ALS, but like that disease came up as something to explore and rule out. So like at the same point in time, I'm like here and I'm here, and I've been energetically just kind of thrown off and struggling to integrate. So the other day I was kind of, like processing that and having a lot of feelings around it. And I am in a little group with Ramona, and I was sharing that with everybody. And she responded and said, yes to feeling split. This exact time we are in has been spoken of, and I've been preparing for it since 1994. We can, when I get home, we can meet up. And I've been like, what have you been preparing for since 1994? And can you give me context for what is happening? Because I feel insane.
Oh, goodness. I mean, that's when I entered the conversation that I think had been happening prior. All I know is my perspective of it and the things that I've learned from it. So I don't know like the global picture or the universal picture of it. But from what I understand and what rings true for me is that we are in, this is the time right now of this global consciousness awakening, this evolution Some people call it from like 3D to 5D. You know, there's different terms for it. All I know is where I started was I got a channeled reading when I was 19, 20. And that was just my beginning of exploring it. And that was back in '94. I was like, what is Reiki? What is channeling? Like, is this real or is this bullshit? You know, I was just kind of exploring. And this channel came through a friend of mine who was a reader, psychic medium, and said, you know, when you're in your 40s, you're going to be helping people wake up. And I was like, cool, what does that mean? You know, I don't know. I was like working fast food at the time. I had no idea like what really that meant. And then he kind of described it more like, no, there's going to be this, you know, a lot of struggle and a lot of like shifts in society. Some things are going to collapse necessarily. Some things are going to be reborn. And I'm terrified. You know, I'm a kid at this point. Like, do I want to be doing anything in this? And that's pressure. And I also, like, part of me was like, I don't believe that. And then another part of me that was deeper that I've gotten in touch with over the past several decades is like, oh, no, that's right. It was like a remembering, like, right, that's why I'm here. But then I didn't, like, prepare for it. It's not like I better get my shit together and how, you know, it wasn't that. It was that I made regular choices in life that made sense from my gut, that, you know, some of them were poor choices. Most of them, though, made sense. And I ended up accidentally in a career in my 30s that in body work from like all these other jobs, but in a position where I found myself in my mid 40s going, whoa, remembering that conversation, because that's sort of literally what I do with coaching, inner child coaching, Enneagram awareness work, body work, trauma work, energy, you know, Reiki. It's all, how do we get back to who we are? And then it's like so that we can what? I don't know, you know, navigate this awakening. I'm not an expert at all that. I don't know if anybody is. We all have our theories. But if you just look around, it's pretty obvious that, you know, that's what's happening. And I didn't create that. I just found myself one day like, oh, wow, I'm doing that thing. This is weird. I found the guy. He's living in Horseshoe Bend, Arkansas. And I was like, Roy, do you remember giving me a reading? And we were good friends. He's like, I don't, but that does make sense. And that's where we are. This is where we are. I don't have a lot of fear around it. And I think maybe that's why, because I've learned how to be scared. And I help people work with fear. So I don't have a lot of fear around it, but it's pretty intense. And so when other people come to me, they're like, I'm experiencing, you know, ascension symptoms, or experiencing this like awakening that feels like death, or I'm, you know, spiritual kind of crises. And it's like, yeah, word. We all are, you know. And it feels like it's right on time. And how do we help each other? You know, how do we like love each other through that?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm not a professional healer. I'm learning to heal myself. I'm trying to make decisions in my business and stuff that bring healing to the world. And one of the things that I've been feeling as I've been waking up the past couple years around what I just kind of my perspective of what I sense is coming is I think just a lot of the system being dismantled. I don't know how that looks, but I know it affects people's livelihoods. And so I'm trying to encourage entrepreneurship because I think there's a whole ecosystem that we could really build to support each other. And AI is a big thing, obviously. It's everyone's guess on how that's actually going to impact the world. But what I do know is that the jobs that are the most human are going to remain with humans, and the ones that are most needed in a time of ascension, chaos, whatever, right? Whatever, like we're going to need more healers. So I'm still building my businesses, but I'm also trying to make space and put resources into conversations like this so I can help bring awareness to what it means to wake up, encourage other people that you can have, if you feel called to participate and be in service to others, that you can actually make a living. There's a need for that. And I know that's something that you've been trying to figure out. It's like, how do you do more of that? You want to maybe share a little bit of context there?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the integration is what comes to mind. It's the integration piece of combining something that started as a self process of self-discovery, or kind of like find my way out of more pain or more suffering and into more wholeness, more integration. So it started very much as an internal thing, and I just find myself, the deeper I go, the deeper I've gone, wanting to allow for more ease for that process with others, with what I can share. And so I would love it if I could just do a hard switch of like leave the normal work life behind and switch to just energy work. But there's also this recognition that true integration means that it's needed throughout the corporate world, or the tech world in my case, or like, you know, different places. That's not just like separating the world of energy work, the world of healing, from our day-to-day things that we already all have. So I do have that drive to like, you know, migrate towards that side of things. But the more I feel like that desire comes up in me, the more I'm aware that the opportunities for integration are fully there in the moment, because of, I don't know, living in the Bay Area, being a part of the tech world, like just kind of being involved in other things other than just the healing field.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answers your question directly, but it's an interplay of like kind of balancing energetic understanding with the mundane, I think.
Mm. What an opportunity, too. I mean, not a pressure type of opportunity, but what an opportunity to like help normalize something like energy dynamic or energy healing inside of a tech company, you know, to like bridge that. You know? And it's difficult to do as someone like me who is not in that world, you know. So all of those worlds sort of need this. It's like you're infiltrating, sort of, you know, and creating conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, because tech, like the Bay Area has always been a little more woo-woo than the rest of America, right? And then you've got tech leaders who, not all of them, but like I'm sure they go on shamanic retreats and do ayahuasca or like psilocybin, and they get, you know, LSD or whatever, and they get inspiration for their product and build it. So you're just in a, interesting part of the world. But I'm on LinkedIn all the time. It's like the dumbest social media channel of all time, but I just show up every day anyway, because that's the world I want to impact. And but I'm starting to meet these people from around the world. And I got introduced to a guy in Sweden, and his like bio is corporate shaman. And I was like, I have to talk to this guy. It's been so interesting. We've had 2 calls. I wake up really early to talk to him because he's across the sea. And he like created an entirely new business formation. So you've got like the LLC and the corporation. He created this entirely new one that's, I don't know what it is yet. I'm still kind of in research mode, but it's like to benefit the earth and the human species. And it got like passed, legalized in Sweden. And I'm like, wow, you can keep creating new things. You can create new business structures. You can create new ways that you get inspiration to build products, new cultures, new ways to interact, you know, together in the work world. So I'm very passionate. Like, if Jumpsuit was able to, let AI take some of the work we do, not all of it, but some of it, give us the highly creative and strategic stuff, and then allow us to support corporations and businesses in this kind of way, that would be a dream. And I don't know how to sell those services. Like, I gotta ask the guy, like, how do you just go tell a company you're a corporate shaman? Like, what did they say to you? It's probably just word of mouth and referrals, but...
Do you have a wellness program?
Yeah.
Like,
that's HR budget for wellness. But it's like, it's something I'm really trying to figure out. And I like to stay close to people like you, because the moment I get the opportunity, you're going to be the ones in the room. So that's why we're talking. I'm like, I want to know what you, like, what do you want to be doing if you had the opportunity to really make an impact in business or schools or whatever? Like, dream a little bit with me.
I think I'm tired, not tired of at all. I'm fatigued sometimes by the one-on-one. I love it. It feeds me. It's important. It has an impact. There's a part of me, though, the idealist, the Enneagram 1, that's like, how can I make more of an impact with the information that I've learned and share it on a wider scale? So for me, I'm leaning more toward, as my body gets older and I find that it has some creaks and limitations, getting away from that one-on-one and getting more into that teaching environment. And so, speaking to larger groups and not just speaking to larger groups, but creating community from larger groups to talk about, what does it mean? What do we mean waking up or healing or any of that? Like, what does that mean in this context, wherever we are? And I'm doing it in schools, and that's amazing. With little kiddos, we're 4-year-olds all the way up to 12-year-old, 13-year-olds, larger groups of kids, small bites of things, breath work, mindfulness, listening, sound, things like that. But my dream is, always been, well, not always been, but more recently been larger kind of experiences with people that is still meaningful. I don't mean volume. I just mean more impact, like into different areas that I would normally not be able to have access to.
Yeah.
So, huge meditations, all around the world happening at the same time. Like, well, how can that impact the planet? Things like that. That's all. Just
Small
I think it's possible. Of course.
Well, they do it. They have
Absolutely.
the 1 million person meditation. I joined in. They do walking meditations. People all over the world join. It exists, and I think that those things are powerful and almost palpable when it's happening. If we're tuned in.
Yeah.
And the more different groups that do them, the more crossover and effect on each they have. I think. I've thought, only in my head, never verbalized it, but I've thought a lot about the idea of doing energy work for the entity of a company, the entity of a, working group of people. And if you can figure out when this group formed, you can run the astrology of them and do it that way. So I've just wondered, what would it be like to do energy work for a company and give the similar kind of prescriptives that come out of a Reiki session, where you're helping people to balance the parts that might be a little less in balance, and being able to give them a prescriptive, here's something that you can do on your own to, keep your heart more open if it has a tendency of being a weaker energy point. And so I've thought a lot about just the idea of doing this with a company, because of the company I work for is a startup. We're fairly small. There's like 8-9 of us. And there is a lot of energy work happening, but I've just thought, what would it be like for this to be a conscious process where you approach the company, and what does this even look like to market, or to kind of like position yourself as someone who is able to work with the energetics of the people and then give them give them solutions. And, you know, these things happen in company retreats on some level, or, you know, the meetings that people have to grow a little closer. But I'm just very interested in this. Seems like it's missing, but maybe it exists in some form of like being able to help to give people guidance on how to manage the energies that are going on within a working group of people, that they can then develop and adapt and kind of make it a common point to meet at and grow from together. Mm-hmm. But it's only been in my head, and I wonder also what you think about that, or what the potential could be.
I think it's beautiful. You know, I think you probably are already doing that to some extent inside wherever you are, because of your energy, like where you go, you're influencing. It does bring me to the Enneagram, because that's the process of it. And it also has some non-confrontational language attached, because it's a program. Yeah. And you can bring a program like the Enneagram into a business and say, hey, guess what? We have one of 9 types, and that's the fun thing to learn. And we can kind of, you know, that's safe, and we can kind of have the language, and then you go a little deeper. Like, okay, well, here's the suffering of the type. Well, here's the struggle. Oh, here's the gift. How do we grow inside of that? And it becomes a spiritual process. It becomes like an evolution of the heart in group, which is really beautiful, because in real time people are able to experience different levels of vulnerability and connection, and so you've used like a system to try to speak of infiltrate, to kind of like come in and teach love inside a corporate setting. When I go into businesses and teach the Enneagram, I don't teach it like, here's the Enneagram and here's slide number 1. I have slides, but it's really about what's happening here for everybody, and we have that inquiry, and I love it. Because it's Reiki, it's healing touch, it's all of those things. It's we do somatic practice, we do, you know, but it's sneaky, you know, because you've got this common language that you can start with that I think is a lot less threatening in that environment. And I still use the language. I start to like kind of use the language as it feels appropriate to start talking about like chi and energy flow and healing, and you know, you see these shifts start to happen, and it's it's a passion of mine too. Like how do we love people and show them how to love themselves and each other inside these institutions that are set up to be kind of antithetical to that, you know. Yeah. So.
Yeah, they really need a framework. They need a process. The Myers-Briggs did a lot of work paving the way to getting companies like interested in the fact there are different types of people who have different preferences, you know, raising awareness around self-awareness and others' awareness, but it's mind oriented, you know. Right. It's literally how you take in information and how you make decisions at its essence. And then the Enneagram was like such a good step forward into but why?
How's your body feel?
Yeah, what?
How does it make you feel? Yeah,
you know, yeah. It's the meaning behind all of it, and because you know, and I think a lot of companies are using the Enneagram. I have a friend who started a tech company who uses the Enneagram to help automate coaching within companies. So if I'm about to have a meeting with you, my Google Calendar knows, and it sends me a little Enneagram message about Ramona. Keep in mind, she's a 1, so she might, you know. Make sure you...
beautiful and annoying.
Yeah,
at the same
right.
time for
me.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. But everyone's trying to figure that problem out, which is like teamwork. How do I show up as myself fully, authentically? How do I maintain connection with someone else who's different, especially in a work environment? Like, it could be so stifling. You don't have a ton of time meeting. It's just like triggers, you know, it's hard. So the Enneagram is like such I think a beautiful thing to be able to take into the workplace. But I agree, like another step forward is a little more out there. with like energy, like chakras, but there's still a system for that, right? Like people in the business world understand Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and isn't that the chakra system?
Yes, essentially.
Yeah. And so I absolutely think there's a way in through that, and I haven't seen that explored. And not that like the majority of our work, the majority of our work isn't culture work, but we've done quite a bit of it. We've had a big insurance company pay 6 figures to help with their culture, and we pulled in Enneagram. So like there's money there, there's need there. And I'm just encouraging you to kind of explore that, because I think there's a way in, and I think it's Maslow's. Yeah.
It's like the language that I think each business or institution, whatever, is going to hear something different that's safe. And I think you got to be able to kind of play with that and navigate that a little bit. But it's all, we were talking about a little bit before we start recording, it's like it's all energy work. We're energy, so it's all energy work. Like how do we communicate that and share with people that they're always in play with energy, even if they don't believe in it. It's like, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's not matter. We're not matter. We're energy. And I think that's like, it's super important to have that conversation. And it starts to get us into the conversation about like waking up and you know, kind of getting through this mucky place that we're in right now. That's all fear-based, you know, globally, culturally. We can't do that, I think, if there's no hope for something else. You know, if there's like, it's like these systems have to go, and we have to know there's something else. And I think one of the something else's is connection and love and energy and healing, you know. But I think it could be Enneagram, it could be Myers, it could be anything. But as long as we're having the conversation that is meaningful and courageous, you know, like David White says, I think that's the hardest thing and the most necessary right now, you know.
Well, and so you were, how old were you in 1994?
2, just kidding. I was born in 74, so I was 1920.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and so, yeah, you were young and you were waking up to the idea of waking up. It was early.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, help explain that. Like, if someone's watching this and they're like, I don't really know what that means. You mean being woke? Like, what are we talking about? Like, what are we talking about?
Okay. So let's talk about, I guess, the first time I experienced Reiki energy, like what that is.
Sure.
Because I know you practice, and people kind of understand that concept. I had gotten really bad migraines, headaches after gymnastics. I mean, I was not a gymnast, but it was an accident I had in PE, essentially, doing a gymnastics thing. Tore my trapezius and started getting really bad migraines right after that. So that's 7th grade. Flash forward all the way to 18, 19. I went to get an adjustment, and then I got some energy work. And I started right after that kind of vibrating whenever I would get a migraine or whenever I would have really any kind of pain, but mostly a migraine. I would start this like internal vibration feeling, which I didn't understand. I wasn't really trying to affect it. It just kind of started happening and my migraine would go away. And I went to my friend Joshu and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but he was an energy worker. And I was like, maybe he can tell me what's happening. And he's like, oh, that's Reiki. Well, I don't know that it was, but that's what he said at the time. He's like, that's Reiki. And he went over to me, can I touch you? And he touched me, and it's not going to be that profound. But when he touched me right there on the third eye, I felt this like jolt of something, very tangible feeling, a physical feeling. And I was like, whoa, Reiki. Like that was my first introduction. He's like, you're doing this for yourself. That's what you're experiencing. So, you know, he told me what I was experiencing. Come to find out, I think he might have been right. Like, I think because after that, it was just this intuitive thing my body would do when I wasn't feeling well, that I would just start this kind of weird, wavy, vibrating thing. Flash forward, like I said, I wasn't in this world. I was of it, I was around it, but I wasn't an energy worker. I was in healthcare, I was in middle management and business, I did all kinds of jobs. But then, 2000, I think 3, 4, 5, somewhere around there, when I entered massage school which is a complete 180 from what I'd been doing. And in massage school, they had a Reiki class. And I'm like, I'm going to take this Reiki class. I remember I've gotten some sessions. This is fun. And as soon as I got into the class, I started being able to feel that feeling, the vibrating feeling, in session. And then it was like through the attunement, then could kind of control it. I don't call it control it, channel it accurately. It's always been a body thing for me. It was like, it's a very physical thing. It's a physical experience. And yeah, so it was like I had kind of maybe got a spontaneous attunement accidentally when I was 20. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of experienced it personally. And you know, with cats and people I loved, I would just touch them. We would, you know, and they would feel something. But really it wasn't till, I think, 2004 or 5 when I was first attuned, that I started being able to know what to do with that, you know. Started working with people. And I realized, I think we all do this. I think we can all do it, definitely. But I think we all, you don't have to learn or be attuned. I think we all know how to heal ourselves if we just, like, listen and show up, you know. So I guess I've been doing it since then professionally. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was my introduction to it. And it's... Reiki was taught to me, I will briefly say, with an amalgam of other things that weren't Reiki, that were taught to me as Reiki. And so I've been really unpacking that and getting back to the essence of what Reiki is, which is separate than, I think, energy work in general. Reiki is a technique, it's a lineage, it's a study, but I think we all do other things, and Reiki is one thing. But I think it gets, you know, we clump it all under Reiki. And I think it's become more acceptable or something to say, I do Reiki. It's like, I do some Reiki, but I do other weird stuff too, you know, or I'm just kinda,
I do, yeah, I come to you.
Yeah.
You put crystal bowls on me. I don't know if they're crystal, I can't see them. Mm. Maybe are they metal?
They're the metal.
Yeah, the metal bowls.
Himalayan bowls.
Mm-hmm. Put spoons on my feet. One day I was like, is that a spoon? Yeah, it's been amazing being on a healing journey with you for the past, how long? A couple years? Have I been coming?
I don't know. I think more than that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
4 years.
Yeah, because we were over at the other space from 2014 on. I don't know when you came in, but yeah. It's been 10 years.
No, that's
over
true.
there.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And I was very dissociated from my body. I was not in my body. Yeah, and you've played a significant role in helping me be there with it, support it, pay attention to it. We don't have to dive into that. I'm just kind of thanking you.
I mean, I'll dive in wherever you want to dive in, baby.
If there's anything you want to say, you can, but...
not my place to say. Yeah. But anything you want to say, I can reply to.
No, that's great.
Okay.
That's great. Anything you want to add about Reiki, since you also practice?
Yeah, I will say through a lot of the other... I really enjoyed doing trades with other practitioners. I feel like I learn about how other people practice, learn how they, perceive Reiki. All of the prescriptive stuff after is interesting to take in from other people. And I will say many of the people who I've collaborated with before, I've noticed do not get as much of the physical, kind of like the physical aspects of feeling Reiki flow through your body, feeling the process of it wanting to go, like leading you almost to certain places. Maybe for someone who's more clairvoyant, this will they'll be guided through images instead of the feeling. And maybe this is just because I also identify as clairsentient, so my feeling senses are more activated. But I also shared that experience in the beginning of being attuned to Reiki and what is this, like all the questioning of like, is this way for everyone? And that was really profound for me to actually feel this like physical guidance of almost like the energy directing me to where I needed to go to help an imbalance that was going on with the client. And it was almost like an opening of being able to, an opening of divination, I would say, like an opening of me recognizing there are all of these tools to use to be guided, to use as divination, to use to connect with spirit, so to speak. And this like physical sensation of energy, or being this specific type of energy being activated within my own experience, caused this whole energetic ripple of opening up to using divining tools in other ways. And I know my experience isn't completely unique with that, but I haven't shared much, I haven't talked about much shared experience with being able to perceive the flow of Reiki and kind of like having it guide the practitioner in that way.
What other divine, if you don't mind me asking, what other divining tools do you use?
Like muscle testing, or using a pendulum, astrology to some degree, which is maybe a little more of a framework, less of like a consciousness connection. Those are the main ones. Yeah.
It's like when you practice Reiki, and you said there's like a guiding thing guiding you. I felt it like gravity, but not pulling you down. How do you experience it?
Well, it's changed a bit, because I think at first it was, I would aim my hands, and it's almost like wherever Reiki was needed the most, then that flow would turn on like a faucet, almost like a drip coming out of a faucet, and then whenever I was aimed where it needed to go, that faucet would be turned up all the way.
And how did you experience it? Yeah.
The sensation was like a tingling, a tingling in the whole palm area. But there's also a pull that's hard to explain.
Do you ever have it like magnetic when you're going over a body and then you're like, whoa, like you have to stop in an area, and then do you ever get like pictures or anything in that moment?
I do, and this is how it has kind of like activated for me recently, is it's a combination of the pull and myself receiving an image of myself in a specific position. And usually that comes when it's not a traditional hand position.
Right.
Like if it's one hand on a hip and the other hand on the side of the body, or if it's a very specific, different combination of what would traditionally be taught as like, these are the Reiki positions that you move through.
Right.
So that's been interesting to kind of like receive guidance in that way.
Showing you exactly what to do.
Yeah,
wow.
Very exact. More exact than like this position will help. It's almost like I've been able to hollow myself a little bit more so that whatever specifically from the person's guides can be done.
I love that. Hollow myself. I feel that. Like that's it. I'm not trying to take over your role. I'm just so excited
You're not
about
taking over anything.
Okay.
Remember, we're following your energy.
But hollowing out has been like, that's like the point, right? It's like, how do I get out of the way so that this really cool thing can happen that I can also benefit from? Because I leave session like, yeah, I feel good, you know. About, I don't know, 6 years ago, I started getting weird words that I edited at first because I'm like, they're going to think I'm insane. But I would see them in cursive, like this, like the word in cursive, left to right with a slant up of something. And I ignored it, and then I started saying it. And I don't get those that often. I get images now, but that was this new thing that started after I've been doing it, 15 years, I don't know. It was really cool. And I was like, okay. It was embarrassing and vulnerable, but I started just saying, look, there's this word. It's Pensacola. I don't know why. I just have to tell you, there's some energy around this. And the first time I was open in that way, the person was like, holy hell. There was a immediate thing. And so what I've learned to interpret that in is there's a communication that this person has that he needs to feel. And then it's like if we're hollow, if we're present but not here in our ego and trying to powerfully affect something, if we're just like here in that flow, we can accurately and effectively reflect it back. So it's like he needed to hear something, and we went on and talked about what that could be, and he got through a whole thing about it. There's a lot of stress he was having with this other job location. It was like really intense, but he needed it, and then the ability to center and be present and hollow is allowing that reflection back, and it's so fun. And I wish I could call it up sometimes, but I think that's just my type. Like, I want to control it, but it's fun when it happens, and now it's different. I'll see like little kid memories, or I'll see like, I'll feel something, or and we'll communicate sometimes that. But anyway, I'm always interested in seeing how other people experience it.
I had, a really good friend of mine who is also teaches Reiki. We did a trade a couple weeks ago. And I would say she's fairly clairvoyant, like her psychic senses are more activated. And it was my heart is racing just thinking about it. It was wild because some of the things that I saw, some of the things that I usually wait till the end to communicate and pass on what came through and what came up over this energy center, and when I was in this position, this thing came up. And what was wild is we had multiple shared visions and we're able to corroborate. Well, it felt to me like corroboration because I was explaining what came up, and she was just kind of in a state of wow, okay, let me now share with you what I saw. And it was the same thing but more depth because of her experience. So for me, it was so valuable because it allowed me to get a little bit more affirmation into okay, you gave me this piece of the puzzle that you experienced in this way, and here's what it was for me, and here's what this past memory was, and here's what's going on currently. And it was involving her mother who had passed a couple years ago, just really impactful things that were being integrated in that experience. And I just really appreciated that because rarely do you get that kind of tuned in, when somebody typically is too. Yeah, when somebody typically is receiving Reiki, they're there to receive and they're in receptive mode. But doing it with somebody else who's experienced with the process, just the ability to validate each other, was very powerful and affirming that I haven't had before on that level.
That's so fun. That's really fun. I think there's still this little part of me that's like, I'm making it all up. So when these things happen, it's like, right, I'm not making it all up. This is real. And I think that's the big trippy thing, is that is very real. And all this isn't real. And just that's the waking up. It's the waking up into realizing that the woo things are way more real than the things that we've created to try to keep us safe and grounded and centered and in control. It's I think that's where we are, to bring it back to what we were talking about at the beginning. We're in this place of this new-ish era of remembering things we already knew, and learning about ourselves, learning about our limitations, our restrictions, and this vessel, this body, these structures, these constructs, and like waking up out of them to remember, like, we're all energy and love and healing, and that's where we're at, So and more people are learning energy skills, inner child work, healing past traumas, generational traumas. It's, this is the first couple generations that have had therapy, and had it be kind of okay, So I think that's what I think we've all been unconsciously or consciously preparing for is, it's an evolution of the spirit, I think, and of the heart, and it feels uncomfortable, and so we need to all learn how to feel really uncomfortable, because I think our culture and our world has learned how to do discomfort and how to do fear and how to do our emotions, but we're just now learning how to actually feel them. And when we can create some safety and efficiency around feeling really uncomfortable and feeling the tension between this body and our remembered spiritual self and all of that tension, and just feeling it and letting it, integrate and letting it kind of metabolize through our limited human flesh suit, like that's what's going to help us move into the next, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I
think even knowing that's possible to be able to ride that wave and be on the other side of it. Right? Because I'm like, I don't know how to map out my consciousness journey. That's like a hard task to do. But I'm going through this like super rapid awakening. And coming after like a 10-year not really thinking much about spiritual things. I'm a spiritual being. I believe that. But like I came out of the church and deconstructed my faith and just kind of turned all of that down for a while because I had to be able to heal and discover myself. And then it's like the moment I turned 40, I was in the ER, my 40th birthday that night, getting a hysterectomy, and it's just which I think is it's part of my spiritual journey. I think it's very symbolic. But just all these things just started happening the moment I turned 40, and it's just been a lot on my body, but it's brought me in my body too. But it's been nice to know that I have so much support here in Nashville, and you're one of many people here who have been kind of doing this work for a long time, helping me kind of understand what's going on and be able to cope with it. And just to hear you be like, yeah, you can work with it. There will be, a place to land. We're figuring that out together. Like, sounds really good.
Yeah, I think we all want it to have an end point.
Yeah.
But I think that, that could be part of the suffering.
Yeah.
It's like if this were a session, I would be like, what are you noticing right now in your body as you're talking about these really impactful, deep, important things that you just said?
Yeah.
That need space.
Yeah.
And then, there would be inquiry as to how you're experiencing the fear of now and the grief of that. And there would be, just attention put on it, which creates more safety around it. And then we would slow down without trying to get over it. You slow down and create more time there.
Yep.
And that's the process. I mean, call whatever we want.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do we sit with that in ourselves, and how do we sit with that with each other, and bring love and safety to it. And then it has a life. It has its own.
It does, yeah. Yeah. I feel hot in my body right now. I feel very hot. I can I'm very aware of what my tension is. But yeah, I love that practice, and I've been going to somatic therapy for the past year too. So it felt so elementary to me in the beginning, which I just find so funny. I had so much to learn. But it was like my nervous system was so jacked. And I just, for the first many sessions, it was just like naming colors outside of myself. I see brown, I see white, and I'm like, why am I doing this? But it really helped regulate me. And then it was like safe enough to go on the inside and be like, okay, what am I noticing in here? Or maybe it feels a little scarier.
Yeah.
Heat. That's not scary. Heat's not scary. You know,
Right.
It is maybe if you give it meaning, that's scary, right?
Or if you try to understand it, yeah.
If you try to understand it, yeah.
It's just heat.
It's just heat, just tension. And then and you're right. If you sit with it long enough, it goes away. It moves. So then, learning to be able to learn how to move my own energy, which is Reiki. Yeah.
Yeah. There's that metaphor. Like if we can learn to sit with our own discomfort, we can better learn to sit with other people's discomfort. And that's what kind of ripples out and creates the healing that the world needs, We can't sit with someone else's discomfort to try to fix tension if we can't access and address tension here, But there's all these defense mechanisms we put up in front of that's not possible, So it's like, I think that's the most profound work we can do.
Yeah.
Isn't, I talk about impact and how I want to go out there and do all these things, but it's like the most profound work I can do in the world is with little inner me, in this instance, I wouldn't say hollow out, I would say feel whole,
Yeah.
And then, but it's sort of the same thing. It's like creating that channel for love. And that's what...
It's like the remembering process. You're remembering as a whole because you're holding space for others to remember who they are. You're remembering into more of a whole.
Yeah.
With yourself and with others. Definitely gives a little bit of a more deeper meaning to the word remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you're the one doing the waking up. Like, it's not like the energy workers aren't doing anything. You're doing the waking up. It's like we create a space, and you get to create a space that's safe, that you can show up in and heal yourself. And so when you're talking about tension and all of this stuff, it's because the limitation of the body and the nervous system isn't yet calibrated to the amount of spiritual awakening you've done.
Yep.
You've done a huge spiritual awakening with whether it's with psychedelics or whether it's with therapy or whether it's been somatic practice. And then your nervous system is like, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't what I'm used to. And so the physical tension that then will, manifest into things like anxiety or disorders or dis-ease is because the body and the nervous system is like, hold up, I'm not, you're the universe, but I'm still here. And how do we make this a hospitable environment that's expansive rather than fearful and contracting against this massive explosion of energy that your heart had and has,
Yeah.
And it's like, so when people, come in or they come to see you or what, and they're like, I'm feeling all of these intense feelings. It's like, well, first of all, EMFs. Secondly, technology. Third, we're in an evolving macrocosm right now. And we have these little bodies that are freaking amazing and miraculous, but they can't contain all of that wisdom and all of that energy. So how do we calibrate? There's all these tools that we can use. But first we have to get that we're okay. We're not broken. It's normal. How could a body deal with all of that expansive awakening?
Yeah.
So...
And that reminds me of the stretching that you were talking about. Like just the
feels like I'm
awareness
being
of polarity.
pulled.
The ability to hold polarity. The ability to have yourself consciously reference the polarity of one place from another becomes more great when we go through that awakening, remembering, becoming whole process. I feel like through my process of that, I'm more aware of the suffering and the pain that I've gone through to get there, but it's also combined with this expansive lightness, expansive, loving, welcoming feeling with life. And I think that really being more awakened, being more conscious is the polarity, is the like integration of the two. And I think that it is painted as a picture of like not polarity, but more ascension, or more, more light, more love, which is true, but you have the reference of where you've come from to get there. And it's almost just as valuable as the expansion.
Yeah. I mean, something that I've been exploring for a while is neurodivergence. And it's like, I'm sure you guys have your own experience of this, but for me, my body was just so sensitive to everything, and my mind so rapid, so expansive, jumping from here to here so fast, before waking up, and then it's like that times a million up here, and then in my body, dude, that, and it's just like, oh my God. So to be able to, go to Reiki or go to somatic therapy and be like, I have to be able to like observe this and not be overtaken by it. Learning how to, I don't want to say control my mind, because you don't want to, you're right, you don't want to like tell something not to be there. I think that's what like parts work. You
you
it's
can
like
boundary it.
you can boundary it. You can boundary
You get
it.
to be here, but you don't get to drive the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't even know, like, I didn't even know I could talk to those parts. I didn't know I had parts. I didn't know I had an inner child. So it's like just waking up to all those tools. Waking up to the tools that can help me with the waking up has just been wonderful. And that's probably why I'm doing this process. It's because, like, I selfishly want to learn more. I want to bring more awareness and more flow into that, because it's so powerful.
And if we all had the tools.
We all have the tools.
I think of that world for my daughter. If we all had the tools of awareness and feeling uncomfortable and feeling safe with fear, like what kind of world that would be. I mean, that would end wars.
Yeah, because our parents didn't have that.
No.
It's like
how do we, be okay with tension, and then not want to, just as you said, just like ascend this human experience and just all love it, which a lot of our peers are talking about, like, we just need to ascend this and lose the ego. And I'm like, lose the ego? We'll love the ego and don't let it drive the car. The ego's going to be there, and don't try to eradicate a whole part of yourself because you're bad. It's like, no, it's sweet. It's we have a body still. We have, I think of like, the point, I think, isn't to ascend into the ethereal or become God. The point, I think, is to be human and to experience our humanness and our limitations in some way and be okay with them. And was that Jack Kornfield book, After the Ecstasy, The Laundry? It's like you have these beautiful spiritual experiences, and then you're like, well, shit, I stubbed my toe. And we got to tend to that, you know what I mean? And it's not less valid.
Yeah.
How do we balance that out?
Got this damn tax audit.
Right.
It just keeps lingering and won't ever end. I completely understand that. This may feel like maybe a little harder shift, but I've been kind of dying to ask your perspective on this. When I try to understand the I don't know, biggest problem in the world right now. There's so many, it's very complex, I know, but like when I look at who's running our governments and who's leading our systems and our corporations and stuff, you see a lot of like narcissistic, sociopathic people in charge. People who want power and put themselves in positions of power. And we know that people end up like that because of trauma, not being able to have the support or healing. I was reading a book, and I can't remember what it's called. Hands of Light?
Barbara Brennan.
Yeah, yeah. I was like thumbing through the pages. It's a book on Reiki. And she was writing about she said like psychopaths, their heart chakra is just like stop. It's like not moving. There's like no energy happening in the heart chakra. And I was recently reading a lot of books about narcissism because of a personal encounter recently. And like all the psychological, I don't know, studies and books and research, everyone's point of view right now is like, you just can't do anything about it. Like it just feels like the answer is like, they're broken. And so when I was reading that book and seeing that it's like, could be that the heart isn't in motion, I was like, well, maybe if we understand energy better and we're able to work with energy better, then we could actually help heal more humans. But you also got to be open to it, and I don't know that everyone is. And I don't know what my question is, but that's an idea that I've been playing with because it gave me some hope and optimism, quite frankly. It's hard for me to just like write off a big group of people and being like, there's no hope. Do you have any thoughts on any of that?
I do. Do you want to start with any thoughts you might have?
I would like to hear what you have.
Okay. There's so many different truths for me in what you just said. One of them is I don't think there are broken people. I had a whole conversation recently with my therapist about evil, where I was like, here's the problems, I don't believe in evil. And he convinced me that evil exists. And I was like, okay, this was an interesting hour, writing the check. Like, okay, I believe it now. But I believe in, I think, again, because of my type structure, because of my big heart, I believe in the idealism of people and love. I think there's two forces. There's love and there's fear. And I think that when people are labeled as narcissistic or psychopath or sociopath, there's just an overwhelming amount of fear that's ruling a person, a personality. So I always have that kind of hopeful thought too of like, this is fixable. But then from my personality, the type 1 Enneagram, the reformer, the healthy point of view for me to have is the virtue of heart presence, of serenity, which is, it's not my job to fix. Even, the world, myself, others, systems, that actually creates a feeling of peace when I realize that God, universe, has the pen, not me. And so there's this conflict. That's my tension. That's my energy work, is an understanding of what can be healed. I don't see it as broken. I see it as perfect and complete and also in need of healing. Juxtaposed with that creates my suffering when I overwhelm myself with the amount of hurt, tension, fear in the world. So how do I stay inside of my nervous system healthily is to accept the world as it is. Accept that there are narcissists in power, and that's my label that I put on fear for them. And to not be right. I think we were talking about this before we started this conversation. Like my growth edge and my playground lately has been in not knowing, not being right. So I'm playing with like, I don't know what's best. Is it best that we heal all the broken pieces in the world? Or is it best that we learn how to be here present fully and expand love out and not focus on labels? Because that's very heady and very fear-based itself, you know. So I have all of these things kind of happening at once. It's like, how do I, and then there's the Buddhist perspective from me, which is, you know, how do I accept and notice the tension that's created here when up against or near this other, and how there isn't an other, and how can we, you know, so much going on, you know. But I think it gives me hope in thinking, how can I be more centered in love and wish that out into the world, and then take right action from there. Like what steps can I take to, like, for instance, how can I heal the narcissistic wounds that I have in myself, or how can I heal the fears that I have in myself?
Yeah.
And then in direct communication with people in my life, like, how do we bring our most healed, awake, you know, aware selves to these relationships, and then how does that, you know, expand out? It doesn't do any good to say what's happening over here is totally fucked up and we need to fix it. I mean, yes, we can say that collectively, murder and genocide and, you know, people not having water, and feel like that's wrong, right? But my playground has been in saying, okay, how do I love that? How do I love and bring compassion to all the sides of that, and lean into conversations about differences and about, you know, possibilities, rather than sit here becoming overwhelmed in my nervous system by all the brokenness in the world, you know? I choose to see it as not broken. That maybe there's a reason, and maybe it's not mine to figure out and fix. What can I tend to? You know, the serenity prayer. If that's my virtue, type 1, serenity, then what can I tend to? And can I gain more of the wisdom to discern between what is me trying to control things that aren't mine, and tend to things that I can affect, you know? And that's how I think I'm able to show up, and how he's able to show up, and we're able to show up for each other as energy workers and as, you know, connected friends and partners, because we're not labeling and othering out there, you know. It's like, how do I bring tenderness to all sides of a conflict? Because fear doesn't make it better. Fear doesn't make these world leaders change, you know. More fear begets fear. And when I'm calling someone a label and saying this is bad and broken, that's not what's so. That's my fear. You know. So what we're left with, without the doing and without the fixing, is just grief. We're left with grief and fear and tending to that. You know. So that's my TED Talk. But I think that's how I feel about it, you know.
Yeah.
It's complicated. And also really not, you know.
The duality of it all. Yeah, I often think about this as these things come up for everyone, as they're present in most narratives. And I think where I go is seeing it and accepting it as contrast for the sake of the collective thing we're going through, and seeing these, whatever we would label as like negative, or like the power controllers, whatever labels they have, as very much in service to the whole. Because without that contrast, you don't have the desire to move away from that, and like to very much clearly recognize that that isn't what we're all in for. But maybe it was at one time. And maybe, yeah, I think that's just also my Gemini brain of like, you know, seeing the duality and wanting to like perceive both of the parts of the dualistic nature of, especially lately, what's going on and how impactful it seems, how ridiculous it seems. And then going back to resting in like, this is just the contrast that brings up the awakening process for many people. It brings up the desire to evolve out of that. And the example that comes to my mind is, and I live in California, so maybe this is more extreme than places around here, but when Trump was announced as president, I was working, growing cannabis at the time. I mean, it was like the funeral of a workmate at the workplace. It was this like really heavy process. There were tears, there was like anger expressed, there was a lot of emotion going on. And I'm not really into politics at all. I find it hard to like attach to any part of it, one side or the other. And I just remember thinking to myself, through all of that emotion being shared in a workplace, maybe a non-traditional workplace, but I just remember thinking, this is contrast that we need at this point. Like, this is going to be the contrast that's going to make us all aware of things that we need to move away from on some level. And maybe that's not the best example, but it just comes up as almost this way to kind of like accept it, but also recognize this isn't where we're aiming at. And just seeing the contrast as kind of a holistic part of awakening, remembering, coming into more wholeness, coming into more of the ability to coexist in a way that's not as damaging to some portion of that whole.
Yeah.
So you're a Gemini and a type 9?
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Gemini still am. Most of my placements are Gemini.
Yeah. So you have this capacity for all of it, all of the sides, and like, oh, I could see that, I could see that, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah, the ability, it's valuable to me in mediation or in just like in any relationship, the ability to step out, step somewhere else, step back in.
Mm-hmm. I've had to study to get to the zygote stage of where you already are, like because I know what's right, I know the right way, I know the body scent. I'm like so certain, One thing that you said about, especially with what's happening now, what I've learned is, and I think this brought some shame for me, is this isn't new. That it's only our privilege that has, made us think that any of this stuff is new. And, social media, so we can see it, but we haven't had to see it. So now we have to see it. And I think that sometimes you spoke to this, if something's not brought to light, how can we see it? So sometimes evil, or sometimes, fear embodied in people, is so maybe we can see it, like you were saying. And because when you have geographical privilege or skin color privilege or whatever it is, we don't see what the reality is for the majority of the world, So we're saying like, this is really new and awful, and that's where my ego structure went too. It was like, no, we need to fix this. Like, I'm going to fix the world, whatever, that whole thing. And he's like, oh, this isn't new. I love my therapist. This isn't new. None of this is new. This is exposed. It's like, oh, okay. And just like a cut, like you need to like let the air get to it so it can heal. And I love that, analogy, because then is it bad that these people are behaving in these ways? Or that we're seeing them behave in these ways that they've always behaved, and now we can tell that it's happening? Is it, anyway, I think that's another perspective of it,
Yeah. Well, doesn't the word apocalypse mean unveiling? The unveiling?
Yeah.
The
Exposure.
Right, but if our entire culture is built up and propped up on the foundation of nothing to see here, then that's going to feel like, the end of the world. And thank God, the end of those worlds, So that's why, like, I'm here for the systems collapse. I mean, I don't want to, like, you know, call on too much, but it's like I am here. I think actually, like, that's one of the reasons why a lot of us are here as, like, light workers, energy workers. We literally made, you know, this is where I get really woo with my own belief system, but I think we have a contract to come here at this point in time and to help bring love into this. Because if we're not doing it and we're not all, like, bringing love into this, what's going to prevail? Mm-hmm. It's like Star Wars, you know? It's like light and dark. It's like the Force, you know? And I feel like that. Yeah, we have to be in our hearts, and we have to be inside of love. And it sounds really, like, cliche, but that feels like the answer. It's pretty much anything, you know? We can break every negative, uncomfortable thing down to fear. And what's the opposite of that, you know? So.
I guess what better place to end than the apocalypse?
Literally. Or to begin, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, this has been wonderful. I'd love to do this again. Is there any final things that you'd like to say on energy or otherwise?
We're all doing it already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a big piece that's perspective. And if we all could widen our perspective just a little bit, me included, then the energy work that we are all doing will be more cohesive, will be more understood, will be more accepted. That's what I hope for.
Like the we're all doing it part, like, I think that's where we started, is it's so natural for us to want to, like, as kids, as babies even, they'll reach out and touch us if we're hurting. It's like they know, you know, it's innate. It's a gift that I think we're given that we forget, and that's hopefully we can become attuned to, but really it's a gift. And fear is energy work too, you know. If we're out there being asleep and fearful and letting our kind of personalities, the mask, drive our actions, that's energy work out in the world. That's just putting the energy of fear out in the world. So we can, like, put the energy of love here and then expand that. It's like fine-tuning our energy work that we're all doing, you know. And that doesn't, you know, we have to learn who we've been being that's not us before we can get to, like, who we actually are, and our gifts, our strengths, our connection to God, to the universe. We have to learn about who we're not in order to see who we really are. And I think that's why I see people, like, I see Trump as a 3-year-old boy. I see, you know, I'm like, ugh, who gave him the keys to the car? But, like, I see that, like, I have to have a tenderness now. It's like, because I've aligned my heart in some way with love, like, I get pissed off, I get, like, judgmental for sure, but my true north is actually what I come back to now is, like, oh, love, 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 you know. And that's what we need to focus more on. That's why I want to have these conversations more, is to remind people of their inherent gift of energy and love and connection and healing, you know. Because it's not just this gatekeeping thing where it's like, well, you know, we're energy, we're Reiki masters, so it used to be $20,000 to get an attunement. It's like, no, tell everybody. You know, I think I've told people, like, this is the Reiki master symbol. It's like I was told by people, like, you shouldn't have that on your arm. I'm like, whatever. Helps me work. It, you know, reminds me. Share it. Let everyone know you all can do this. You all do this, you know. It feels like that calling is the calling I want to, you know, listen to going forward. It's like reminding people of who they are and how freaking powerful they are.
Yeah.
You know. So you're powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.